Welcome into another episode of Behind the Catch Fence. I'm your host, David Hoffman. Welcome to episode 30. Man, we are 30 episodes into this franchise of a podcast. Well, franchise, you never know, could be there eventually. But before I begin, I'd like to give a quick shout out to No Copyright Music on YouTube. They're the ones creating the music that I'm playing. It's obviously no copyright music, so it's free. I'd like to thank you guys for that. With me being a broke college student, I'm grateful for you guys. Go subscribe to them, No Copyright Music. As I said before, welcome to episode 30. We made it to the big 30, everybody. Man, what a wild ride it's been. I'd like to thank all of my listeners for tuning in every week, and I'd also like to thank all the drivers who have joined the show. March and April have by far been the biggest months in this show's history, with guys like John Force, Richard Petty, Simon Pagino, Elio Castroneves, Stingray Robb, just all joining the show. I never could have imagined having that stacked of a lineup 1 year ago, but here we are. I figured why not keep the interview train rolling along with yet another fantastic guest. Today on the special 30th episode of Behind the Catch Fence, we have none other than the 2011 NASCAR Hall of Fame inductee and 1988 Daytona 500 champion, Bobby Allison. The driver fifth all-time in most wins with 84 has long been a staple in the sport, as he helped put NASCAR on the mainstream map alongside Richard Petty, Cale Yarborough, Darrell Waltrip, and Bill Elliott. Alongside with his brother Donnie and Red Farmer, they formed the famous Alabama Gang in the 60s and 70s as they tore up and dominated tracks all across the state. Bobby and I discuss a number of topics, and if you enjoyed my interviews with the legendary Mario Andretti and Richard Petty, I'm positive that you'll be equally, if not more, entertained. Now enough with the chit-chat, let's get right into it. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite snack, maybe some fish sticks or chicken nuggets, whatever you like, and enjoy this episode with the legendary Bobby Allison. Hey, Mr. Allison, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good.
Good.
How have you been with the whole pandemic going on?
Well, it's been a chore from here to there, I had to make a lot of changes in plans, changes in routine and all that stuff. But so far, we're still making it barely.
Barely, yeah. We're getting to the end of we're getting to the finish line here soon, hopefully.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Just first off, just where did your love for racing begin?
Well, grew up in Miami, born and raised in Miami. And after the Second World War, some guys got together and got the idea to get a little racetrack going. And they got a chance to use a part of the Opelika Air Base, which had been downsized. It wasn't closed completely, but it downsized. And so there was some vacant land there. And it was quite unusual because they had some grandstand bleachers. I guess it was from some of the other activities that they had there. But they had paved straightaways, which were the service lanes that they had made for the, getting the equipment to the airplanes and so forth. Naval Air Station there. And so it had paved straightaways and dirt corners. And so these guys had charged down these paved straightaways and go sliding off into the dirt. And it was really attractive. And I was about 10 years old, and I thought that was neatest thing I'd seen up to that point. And I really, I worked to get to go there often. I mowed grass and earned a couple bucks and did things like that. But rode my bicycle too. It was about probably 8 or 10 miles from my house to where the racetrack was. Paid a lot there to the racetrack and pay my quarter to get in and watch those races. And then they built a new paved track at Hialeah. And so I was there for opening day, and I had turned, I guess I had turned about 16. I was a junior in high school. And I had a motorcycle. I was a little tiny guy, but I had got enthused about getting a motorcycle and I ended up buying a Harley 74 from a guy. And I rode it and actually never spilled or anything. But if it fell over, I was too little to pick the thing back up. I'd always have to get somebody to help me pick it up. But anyway, rode that motorcycle out there. They decided they're going to have an amateur division. And one of my classmates was Fran Kersey, who later became one of the quarterbacks for University of Miami and went on to her pros for a while and became the coach of the Tampa Bay team early in the expansion. But anyway, Fran had a 38 Chevy Coupe. So I saw my motorcycle and bought his 38 Chevy Coupe and put my seat belt in there and painted a number on the door with shoe polish and went out to Hialeah Speedway and started my racing career.
And you mentioned this with local tracks. I've always been fascinated, just especially back during that time when racing was really starting to become a bigger thing. Just what made those local tracks so special? Just with having these competitors from all over wanting to try this.
Well, first of all, the car thing was really neat. They had pretty good rules and regulations, and you had to adhere by race regulations that made the cars pretty competitive. And of course, the Fords and Plymouths were the most competitive initially, but also the Chevys were a little bit. And the 38 Chevy that I got from Fran was one of those that was able to be tuned on a little bit. And in fact, it was able to be tuned well enough that the third week of this thing, after having 30 cars in the first week and 40 in the second week and 50 in the third week, I won the feature or the event. Actually, I only had one event, but it was the main event for those guys or for us guys. And it really turned me on. Made my mom a little bit disappointed, but I said, "Mom, if you let me race, I'll improve my grades in school." And so I kind of won her over a little bit, and I went ahead and got my grades up a little bit, which at least I felt like that I was taking care of my side of the bargain. And so I raced until the end of the school year, which is when I graduated. And then a really unusual deal happened to me. I joined the National Guard, which I really was an unusual thing in a lot of ways. First of all, I was really little. I was 5'4" tall and weighed 110 pounds and did not shave. But I graduated from high school and I had already won a couple of races. And so I really thought I was going to go somewhere. Well, found out that the National Guard was recruiting for youngsters and trying to get that thing going. And I was impressed by a couple of the Guard superiors and the commander of the troop. They had a little Cuban lieutenant that was a really neat guy. And so I joined up with them. And with that, I got an offer from my uncle through my mom's prompting him to get me to go to Wisconsin to get me away from the racetracks in South Florida. By then, I discovered there was more than Hialeah. There actually was one up further up the road, West Palm Beach. And there was one in Key West, Florida, of all places, which was a long ways away, but at least I knew it was there. Anyway, went ahead and responded to the National Guard, and with that, got this offer to go to Wisconsin. Got an honorable discharge from the National Guard, and packed up and went to Wisconsin. And my Uncle Jimmy Hallett, had me a job with Mercury Outboard Motors. And, I was thinking it was like probably some mechanic in one of the assembly lines, or some cleanup guy, or anything with what the real deal was. When I got there, I found out that myself and three other youngsters that they had hired, they were all over 18. I was still 17, but the four of us were test boat drivers. And so we put boats in the water every day and rode around the lakes and rivers of Wisconsin, and then got a paycheck on Friday. So I thought that was really a neat deal. And stayed there for about 6 months, and finally the cold weather came in, that stuff that I had never seen before that fell out of the sky, that white stuff. So they closed down the boathouse there and shipped us to the Southern Boathouse, which was at Sarasota, Florida. And from there, I got sent back to the race car shop in Charlotte, North Carolina, which was really great for me. And I worked 2 months and 2 weeks, I think it was, at the little shop, or the big shop that Keycaper had in Charlotte. Buck Baker drove, and Speedy Thompson, and Jimmy Thompson, Herb Thomas, a few other guys along the way, Jack Smith. And I went to a race and worked. First of all, I went to shop, and Ray Fox put me to work working on the car. And we went to a race, and one of our cars won the race. And that was really neat. Then over my period of time there, I went to 19 NASCAR races, and one of our cars won every one of those 19 races. And really had me enthused over that. Keycaper was hard to work for, and finally that came to an end, and I left and went back to South Florida and got my stuff going, and learned a little bit more about racing and driving myself. And then when I was 21 years old, I went to Alabama for the first time. In Alabama, from where my career really started and blossomed.
And you mentioned just with working on cars, just when you were growing up with that, just where did you learn just to work on cars, and how did that kind of help you when you transitioned into full-time racing?
Well, you learn by fixing the lawnmower and fixing the anything that's got a little motor on it, and taking the outboard motor apart. My dad had an outboard motor and didn't use it much because he worked all the time. But I would get over there where he couldn't see what I was doing and take it apart and put it back together. And sure enough, it would run again. We had a power lawnmower. It had a gasoline motor on top of a little lawnmower, and so I got where I could take that lawnmower apart, the motor apart on the lawnmower, and that was a fun deal. And that taught me a little bit about that. And then I got that 38 Chevy from Frank Kersey, and pretty soon I was taking it apart and putting it back together too.
And just with being at the track for so many years, just growing up through the sport, I'm sure there's a lot of personal growth through all the years of just racing and being around family, friends, and just what were some of the biggest lessons that you've learned just inside the sport?
Well, the first thing I guess I learned is, everybody had to go by a given set of rules and regulations, and I began to know that I could look at the different rule books and for the specifications for different cars and different applications. Study that and pick out the best one, and try to experiment and try stuff, go to the racetrack and see if something was a little better or wasn't quite as good. And I really got handy at that early on. And then I got some help. There was an old man that lived in our neighborhood who had raced back in the 30s on the old dirt tracks with the fairgrounds circuit that he ran in those days. And he was a great help to me. And he taught me things about preparation and about the setups for the car to make the car handle better in the corner, drive better, go faster, all those kind of things. And really paid attention to that, and was famous for building another car. Every time I turned around, it seemed like, it didn't take a lot, but it did take a little bit of cutting and welding and, putting things in position and, getting that preparation all done. And it was really good for me. And I had seen the specifications of real high-tech spec stuff when I was with Keycaper, because I got assigned to the race team there at Keycaper, and they had some really good mechanics and really good late equipment and modern equipment, and that all was good for me.
And you mentioned earlier about the Alabama game, when that kind of got started with you, your brother Donnie, and Red Farmer. Just how did that come to be?
Well, Red Farmer was one of the guys that was winning in South Florida, and I would ride my bicycle out there and skate again in the grandstand, and then finally tow my little 38 Chevy coupe out there and go race myself. And I was aware that he was a fairly frequent winner. And I met two young guys that were just helpers at his shop. Actually, they were just practically cleaning up for, just kept the place clean and neat and stuff like that. Roger and Bill Purdom. And so I went over by Red's shop. They were building a new Chevy, V8 Chevy car, which was not very common at the time yet. And that old fellow that was chief mechanic, Homer Warren, was also the service manager of the big Ford dealerships in there in Miami. I knew him because of riding with my dad around some of his jobs, and one of them was at all mine were Ford. And so Homer said, well, you've been up there up there at Keycapers where they run the dual 4-barrels. And I want to run dual 4-barrels. And so I want you to get them ready. So here's a manifold and here's 2 carburetors, and you get them ready, and I'll have the engine ready in a day or 2. And so I said, sure. I had never even had a carburetor. I had not even had a screw out of a carburetor at that time. I went to a parts store and bought an engine overhaul, or carburetor overhaul manual. And I took that carburetor apart and adjusted it all like the book said it was supposed to be. Made a nice set of throttle linkage and, nice gasoline hookup for it. Took it and gave it to Homer. Homer stuck that thing on there, and they went to the racetrack, and Red Farmer won the next 19 feature races in a row. And by then I had gotten noticed that I had done something to help the car, and so a guy had offered me his sportsman car to race if I would work on his modified Austin. So I did that. Raced that sportsman car, and I could win the sportsman heat, but the modified started behind the sportsman and the feature, but then by the time the feature went a while, they all got passed. But sometimes I finished as far up as second. Never won one, but I finished as far up as second. And then the guy that had that car decided he didn't want to do it anymore, and by then I was off to building my own stuff and built my own first modified, and it ran pretty good. And a friend of mine took a trip up through Alabama because his girlfriend went up that way, and him and my other friend that owned the car that he'd been driving decided they would go see if there were tracks in Alabama they would race at. So they did, and they came home with these big stories that, yeah, there's really great tracks in Alabama, paved and good purses and all that stuff. And so I took Donnie with me, and he was kind of on the outs with Mom at the time because he was littler than me and younger, and was a little bit more in trouble than I was on and off. But she wanted to get him away from the racetracks down there, and so I took him with me to Alabama. And he'd been driving a little bit of limited sportsman, had a helmet, and a little bit of racing gear and ready to go. And so we went to Alabama, and the first night I qualified on the pole, I remember, and led the race, did everything, but another guy beat me for the feature. I finished second. Got a bag full of money, it looked like. And so I was really sold on that deal. And I went to see, back home during the in-between week, to see my love life, little Miss Judy. And, got back in time for Friday night's events. And we ran Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon. And got back in time to get the weekend stuff in. And the second weekend, I won Montgomery, which was on the second night, Saturday night of the weekend. I won my first feature of my career that night. And Donnie, well, we had other friends with us. Kenny Andrews owned the car, and Gil Hearn drove, and Gil Hearn went home. And Kenny said, "What do I do? What do I do?" And I put Donnie in it. And so Donnie ran his first modified race ever that night that I won my first. And he had a good finish. And I didn't win, but he won some money and had a good run. So it got his start. And he and Kenny stayed together, and I went back and forth and bounced around anywhere I could see or hear of a track. Go run a different track. I enjoyed that, but I also thought it helped me too. Just getting a different racetrack, getting used to whatever the different field would be. And so it ended that year with, I think, four wins that first year. And I was really happy, and decided to make Alabama my home and run those tracks.
And you had mentioned just with you and your brother Donnie, you guys for years have just seemed to be inseparable. Just just how special just was your relationship with him to, just to grow up, to go to the racetrack every single week, and just I'm sure that was a lot of fun being able to go to Alabama and just experience all that with him.
Well, that part was too, and I skipped over a part that I really should mention too. I was a fan of Red Farmer. He ran good down in Miami, and I got to know him personally, and I built those carburetors for him, and they were a big success for him. And so I went home and got him, told him, "Red, you need to load your stuff and go to Alabama. Purses are good, the tracks are good. It really is a good thing." And he came back for a 4th of July event that was spread over 2 weekends. So the 4th was in the middle of the week that year. And so the weekend building up to it had special events. And then the weekend after the 4th had special events. So they all paid extra and had all kinds of different activities going on. And Red ran, he ran 8 races in the 7-day period, and he won 7 of them. So 7 out of 8 was pretty impressive. And in fact, one of the other pretty good competitors said, "What did you bring that guy for?" And I said, "That's who I want to beat." So And it took me a while, but then I got where I could beat Red Farmer too. It made me happy.
And you and Donnie, you guys just, you seem to be just, I'm sure that was a lot of fun just to see him be successful as well during those times. And just what kind of lessons did you guys learn from each other just as you were, moving up to NASCAR?
Well, we helped each other with the setups on the cars and experimenting with how much that bite you would put in the chassis and how much, you do this or that, how much air pressure maybe or whatever, how much spring. And then it then had the comradeship between the three of us. Red was enjoyable to be around, and Donnie was enthusiastic like I was, and we really enjoyed working on the cars. And as you take something apart and put it back together, if you just pay a little bit of attention to what you're doing, you do learn. And so we were pretty good at that. And the third year that we were in Alabama, we were in, I think, 96 races, I think. And I won 41 of them. And Red Farmer ran about 20 of them, and Donnie ran 25 of them. So we became the Alabama gang for sure.
You pretty much tore up all of those tracks, definitely.
Yeah.
But just looking back during just your entire career, what were what kept you going when times were tough? Whether it was on the track, off the track.
Well, life has got its tough points. I had some mishaps along the way. I had a couple of crashes and a couple where I even got hurt a little bit. Not seriously hurt like later on. Later on, I got really, really hurt, but hard enough hit that it was painful, and a couple of weeks of recuperation to even feel like could deal with a night's race, and it's but it helped me, and I'm sure it helped Donnie, and certainly helped Red. Red is 94 years old right now and still racing. So he's incredible. He went back to dirt, which we didn't do the dirt. Donnie did it better than I did, but I really avoided it the best I could. But Red Farmer still went on dirt till just a few years ago, and he's got a new dirt car right now, and he's at Little Talladega on Saturday night. And this always was a boost for my enthusiasm, and we just worked away, but we got a big kick out of being called the Alabama gang. All three of us were from Florida, but we became the Alabama gang, and that was okay with me.
And you mentioned in 1980, you mentioned like bigger crashes that you've had over the course of your career. 1987 at Talladega was probably one of the more bigger ones. I know that kind of changed the landscape just for how NASCAR looked at super speedways. Just before restrictor plates, what kind of or how dangerous was it to run a Daytona or a Talladega?
Well, the restriction plates certainly were a help because the speeds were really getting wild there about that period of time. But the high speeds were something that they had never seen before Daytona came on. And then we were kind of adjusting to that pretty good, and then Talladega came along, and it was better and faster than Daytona. And so it was a situation where we had to go through a whole new learning process, but also we had to look at car construction again, safety stuff, better roll bars, better suspension, all those kind of things too. Better aerodynamics even. At first, aerodynamics were not even a part of our picture, and just make it look nice, and that was pretty much the deal. But all of a sudden, we found out that if you made the fender look a little bit different like this, like the headlight in a little bit different place, and stuff like that, that it actually did help the aerodynamics of the car. And so all those things came together and kept us working, trying to find all the solutions that we needed for all the different problems. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. We didn't do the total best job done, but I think that we did well on that.
I don't know, one of the cars you run during your career was that the Superbird, the Plymouth Superbird. How did that handle compared to a normal stock car at the time?
Well, actually, I ran the Dodge Daytona, which was
Dodge Daytona. Yep.
Dodge's car, the same actual configuration. And I went fast in the Dodge, and I went fast the very first time because the car drove so smooth and responded so well to driver input. And because it drove smooth, I held the steering wheel very straight, where most of the other guys sawed back and forth on the wheel. And they found out that was scrubbing speed off. And I saw that, and I saw it was helpful. And the wings, both the Dodge and the Plymouth had exactly the same wing, but the wing really made the car stable. It could go into it a little bit of a slide and get it right back without any great big maneuver. Some of us were pretty good at going into great big slides and sliding for long ways before we ever got it back straight. But those, you could ease up off that gas pedal and the thing would come right back around straight. And that was pretty neat. It gave you a lot of confidence to run the car hard and run close to each other. And that the aero wars became quite interesting because Ford didn't do the wing thing. They just did the body work. And Ralph Moody, who was one of my really all-time great heroes, and who I drove very successfully on a couple of occasions. He really had the knack for knowing how to, besides that sheet metal, just a little bit, so pass the inspection, but go faster. And we did that, and of course, encouraged the factories to do the cars, made the cars a little bit more aerodynamic right from the factory. So that all became better and better.
You mentioned that with a little bit more than that could kind of sneak by NASCAR. I know the 60s and 70s seem to be more lenient in terms of inspection, that they have a lot more technical now. Just how was that was one example, but how did you guys find ways to kind of find a little bit of an advantage on the competition?
Well, you just go to the racetrack and have little gimmicks pre-prepared where you could go ahead and run a car that had gone through inspection and passed it, and then make a little change over here in the side of the garage area and slip back out there without letting the officials look at it. And then, of course, if you went very much faster, they would come look at it anyway. Sound the alarm to them. And we did that, And sometimes we did it for the fun of doing it, and sometimes we did it to try to make our stuff go faster than those other guys.
And during the times of I could almost say it's almost like the golden era of NASCAR, when Richard Petty, Cale Yarborough, Darrell Waltrip. Just how special was it during those times when NASCAR was really beginning to take off?
Oh, it was really good. We had a lot of good camaraderie, but we also had some intense competition. And there were a few guys that could get away with stuff. They had a few of the inspectors kind in their pocket, friendly with them, or had extra money that maybe they could slip over to them or something like that. And that did go on, and that really riled me. It caused me to have a few hard words with a few different people along the way, but it also helped one guy go better, and that made everybody have to figure out how to go a little bit better to catch their first guy.
And I know, just off the track, I've read that you're a very avid fisherman. Where did that come from, and how has that kind of been a great outlet for you outside of racing?
Well, my dad really enjoyed fishing, and he had a younger brother who was addicted to fishing. Uncle Jake went fishing all the time, and sometimes he'd take me with him. Sometimes he'd take Donnie. Sometimes once in a while 80, but not very often 80 or time. But me and Donnie, we could convince Uncle Jake that he ought to take us fishing. And I don't know how much fishing you've ever done, but when that thing hits that bait and wiggles that rod for you, it's just a sensation, that pure pleasure. And so I really enjoyed that, and I got some pretty nice fishing equipment. I even worked one summer in a tackle shop in Miami, and I would do special things to earn enough to get some nice piece of fishing equipment myself, or something like that. And then I would see a little stream here or there, or a little pond here or there, and you'd be surprised. Throw a good lure out into a stream or a pond like that and have a pretty nice bass jump on that thing. It really was a good feeling.
I know the only fishing I've done is, I believe I was 5 or 6. My dad took me to like a park or something, and I had won like second biggest fish trophy or something like that. Still have it. I'll dig it out sometime. But yeah, just when it comes to fishing, just I've read that you had there's like this bass tournament that they had in the infield of Daytona. How was that?
Yeah, that was pretty good. I won that three times, and the prize was a boat, motor, and trailer. But it was really a-okay. I had that last boat, motor, and trailer until, now it's been about 10 or 15 years ago. It finally went away, but it was from back in the 60s. So I'd had it a long time. And but first of all, any contest is beat the other guy, just like racing. Beat the other guy. And so even if you didn't get a boat or a cash award or something like that, if you beat the other guys, you still got the win for that day. And we did that some. And I actually had a folded up Daiwa fishing rod. It was like a briefcase, and had my favorite lures in there, and I could just open that thing up in a matter of a few seconds, put it together, and go fishing. And so along the way there, they decided, well, it'd be fun to have a fishing contest in the lake back there in the infield. And I thought that was really a good idea. And then, of course, like I say, I won the thing those three times, and had a nice prize for winning.
That's a really great prize if you ask me. But final question: 2011, you were inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Just what were your emotions during that, and how special was that just for your entire family, knowing how much you guys have just worked and gone through stuff?
Well, I was incredibly honored by that. I was afraid that I'd be honorable mention. There were so many guys that had done good, and I knew I had done good. But I think one of the things that really helped me come out on top for the Hall of Fame is people around me the country had a chance to write in and affect the vote. And a lot of people wrote in for me. But there's a lot of people that really were paying attention voted for me too. So I thought that was just really super. And the family, of course, was all cheering for me and enjoying it with me, and family and friends. So when you go in there right to the second year of the original deal, was really special.
That's all the questions I have, Mr. Allison. I appreciate all the time that you've given me today, and just continue to stay safe and healthy.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
You have a good day.
All right, you have a good one too.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Behind the Catch Fence with special guest Bobby Allison. It was a real thrill being able to hear Bobby reminisce just about how he got his start, where the Alabama game came about, and just his love for fishing. It was really just heartwarming to hear how much his family has just played such a pivotal role in his life, and after talking about fishing with him, I feel like I should give it another chance maybe. I mean, hey, maybe I can improve on my 5-year-old self with winning second biggest fish. I'll have to dig that out, by the way. Maybe I could post it on the social media channels. But I'd like to thank Carrie Hewitt and Bonnie Allison Farr for making this all possible. I'd also like to thank Bobby once again for coming on to the podcast. We are just about out of time for today's episode, so look out for more interviews and content over the next couple weeks. Before I go, make sure to follow this podcast on Twitter and Instagram @BehindCatch. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you guys later.